in China, what we did, we designed a humanoid robot, and we build also the humanoid robot. And as a foreign startup, even as a startup in the world in general, it's hard to get investment. So foreign startup in China, it could be a bit harder. And maybe I didn't meet the right people. And the competition is crazy. Let's say you're a foreign investor. You look at the foreign startup, the French, the most famous in robotics. You look at the French foreign startup in China, in humanoid robot, you're like, impossible. He cannot compete. He cannot, which I understand. If I was an investor, I might think the same.
So you don't find the right people who give you money, then for sure the engineers will go to Unitree or go to Agibot then.
We try. We open the startup, we build something, then we try to find investor. We didn't find. All my engineers find let's say a stable, normal job when it's humanoid robot in other company. Everything was done good. Me, myself, I'm like, okay, I done my best. Next, do the same in France.
So, Jules, I want to start with a sentence and then you tell me what you think about it.
Okay.
Okay. So my thesis is China is the single best place in the world to build a humanoid robot. Right or wrong?
I will not say right or wrong. To build, yes. To design, I don't know.
What is the major difference building and designing?
Building, you basically once you have your design on the computer, the 3D design, you choose the material, the joint, the shape, everything to put together, the component, the part. Then you ask a factory to build it, and then you put them together. The design is how it's gonna be shaped. For example, you have the arm of the humanoid robot. Which shape you're gonna have? Which the kind of joint you're gonna use? Which kind of mechanical design you will think about to be really smooth? That's design. Then build it is like, okay, I want to build something like this. Just ask the factory to tell them, look, you need this dimension, this material, this time. Please build it. Then they build it, but they don't necessarily know what you will use this part for. This is building.
So the factory doesn't really know what, how to design. They don't really have.
No. It's not about a factory. Is made mainly is to build. Design is made by other kind of engineer. But I can give you another example. Back in the past, for example, with Tesla, the design of Tesla car was done always in US, and then some were built in China. Now China know also how to design it, and we have so many electric car. But if you look at the iPhone is still designed. I don't know exactly what is happening these days, but at least some years ago, the iPhone was still designed in US. So the design is the how you bring the assembly, how you bring everything together and build it is the factory. Tell them exactly what to do and they do it. So to answer your question, build for sure.
Yeah.
Design, I don't know. It's still a good place to design, but Europe and US are very good at designing also.
We'll talk about this later. So I asked this question because, our podcast is, and me personally, my mission and my vision, my belief is I always think the future is happening in Asia. And actually, Michael and me, when we started this podcast, before we even recorded the first one, you always were on our list for a podcast guest because I saw your LinkedIn or something and I said, okay, there's a European guy building a robot in China. It was maybe 6 months ago. And then I thought, okay, we have to talk to him because we always have a friend who tells us nobody talks about the success stories of people, of foreign people, entrepreneurs building stuff in China. And then it didn't happen because mostly we were recording in Shenzhen. So the people see we have a new environment here because we have filming in Shanghai right now because I really needed to talk to you because you had a very viral LinkedIn post last month, I think, where you were saying you're leaving China. you're not building a robot in China anymore, right?
Building, but maybe not design.
Not designing, but you're moving.
But you already started your company like 1.5 years ago, right? So how far is design and building for your own robot now?
It's in fact we are in China. What we did, we designed a humanoid robot, and we build also the humanoid robot. Now I'm moving all the operation to France. We're gonna start from scratch from France because in China, by designing and building, I learned from the past mistake. So I'm doing something more efficient now in France.
I'm not sure if this is true. We will have to talk about it later. So let's start from the beginning. So you moved to China as a student, right?
Oh yeah, I moved. With some university, you got like double diploma.
Uh-huh.
So I moved here because we have a university partnership.
And you studied finance back then, right?
I studied engineering in France
Oh, okay.
and then finance in China.
And then your first job or your first mission was also to promote Shanghai and the district of Lingang to the world, right?
No. So I did a master. So I've been 10 years in Shanghai.
Uh-huh.
I did a master of engineering first. Then I did a master of finance in Shanghai. Then I worked 4 years as a finance controller. Then I worked 4 years, for a Chinese state-owned company. So a company related to the Chinese government to develop a special area of Shanghai called Shanghai Lingang. And then 1 year and a half ago, I also opened a company to create a humanoid robot.
So how did you come from this job or being a student, being a controller, to thinking, okay, I have to build a humanoid startup in China?
Honestly, I think it's about the age. Like
I mean, how
now,
old are you? You look so young.
I'm 32.
32.
I'm 32. I think, honestly, it's because in this job, where I was working with a state-owned company in China, I met many consulate, many ambassadors, many top CEO, many top director. And I kind of get the feeling, I was like, hey, I can do it. Like, people doesn't look so special. Like opening, like creating a company and make it like something successful and big doesn't seem so hard. Because in fact, I have the chance with this job in China to meet so many people that after, at the end of meeting so many people during 4 years, I was like, okay, I can do something also.
But those people were mainly Chinese CEOs or only
foreigners, Chinese from
okay.
all over the world. Because Shanghai Lingang, it's one of the most international places in China. So the main focus was to attract foreign investment in Lingang.
Oh, okay.
So I met many foreign consulate, ambassade, top companies. Yeah.
So did you succeed in attracting FDIs for Lingang?
Yeah. We succeed, but Lingang is Shanghai Lingang is like developing for it's a plan for 30 years.
Okay.
There is 10 years and 20 years, and so it's step by step. Yeah, we did, but it's growing step by step. You got more and more foreign companies there, but yeah.
And then most of the investment that you attracted were for technology, or how did you end up saying, okay, I can do it myself. I will do robots, because robots are all over the place now in China, or because of your background, or why?
For me personally, it's robot for elderly people. If you ask me to make robot for factory, I'll be like, I will let other people do it. But it's robot for elderly people. How it come? I understand quite well, mechanical engineering, electronical engineering, robotics in general. This technology I quite understand. If you ask me to do nuclear, I would be like, I don't fully understand what is happening in there. But robotic, I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Secondly, I think in our life, we need to help people. It's kind of a goal. I mean, it's quite obvious for me. You think, what do you do with life? And at the end, like, help people seems something good to do. So, and I think about my grandparents, my parents, me when I will get older, my daughter when she will get older. I'm like, I want to do a robot for them, for me, for my parents, for my daughter, for everybody.
Yeah. So, what is the idea? What is your robot about? Is it more social? Emotion support, or
I won't say it's everything, but it will take years. But the first prototype we'll develop is like a walker. When elderly people need to walk, they have a walker to a robot walker. So basically, there is a screen, and you can help them to walk. give them target every day. For example, okay, we did a 20 step today. Tomorrow we will do 25 step. Speaking to them if they want to send a message to their children.
Nice.
And also moving by itself. For example, your grandfather or your grandmother is sitting and the walker is there. She asks, hey, come. The walker come. And you can use it.
How far is the prototype now?
We start everything from scratch. So we are starting the design last week.
Oh, really?
I mean,
But I saw some pictures already.
I closed the Chinese company 2 weeks ago. So, but we start the design. No, the real design, like the design that we can send to the factory after. What I sent you, it was a beautiful design, like just a design, but not with all the engineering characteristics.
Oh,
But now we are starting the real design, like the material, the joint. Like we basically will send to the factory to build after.
So when did you start your Chinese company?
1 year ago.
1 year ago.
Yeah.
And now you're closing it down already.
Yeah. Why? It's not about because I will not come back to China. I can open. Maybe I will. I will go back in France and then later come back in China and open a new company. It's if you open a Chinese company and you are not in the country, could be quite complicated. For everything, you need your passport and you need to be there. So I prefer to close and open maybe later if I need.
So when you said like you had the idea that you see other people, other businessmen, they're doing their business, it cannot be so hard, right? So what is that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
So what is the first step you did when you said, okay, I have an idea, I want to build a robot for the elderly, then you do all the administrative stuff, you open the company, and so on and so on. How do you go on from there?
I think it would be a bit like everybody's service, but that's the truth. It's about who you meet. You can get the idea, but you need to meet the right people to help you to for example, for the company in China, is because I met a very good Chinese engineer, and he very loved the idea about building a humanoid robot for elderly people. And so because we're together in this, he has access to university to use the machines, 3D printing, and so on. So if I didn't meet him, I don't know where to start. I need to use my own money. It would be like too much for me to spend. But I meet him, and after I meet other university. So it's I meet the right people. And then in China, we can start to build together, think about, how do we do everything together. And for France, the same is happening, in fact. I met some French engineer, and they also love the idea. And so even if I'm not in France now, they already started design. So it's about first robotic for elderly, but then it's like, who is in it with me? Who want to do it with me? You cannot be alone. It's about who you meet also.
So you don't work together with your Chinese partner any longer as soon as you go back to France?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm still in contact with them. For example, once we design in France and later we need like to build in a factory, I will ask them quotation, how much it is to build. Yeah, for sure. That they are friends, still friends, and maybe we'll come back later. But right now, if I want finally to have a MVP, like a minimum viable product, if I want a product at the end of the day, like in less than 3 or 4 months, I need to go back in France now, because I need to take less risk.
So is it even possible to succeed as a foreigner with a robotics company in China?
Yeah.
Is it? Are you sure? Because we went to Agibot last week. Then we went to
Furia.
to like 4 or 5 different robotics companies. And what we see there for the Chinese, number one, they have a lot of money because they have a lot of investment, right? And Agibot or Furia, one of them is also very strong in rehabilitation, like using Furia. They are very strong in using robots for rehabilitation, and they have a lot of money and a big team. So do you think you actually can beat this competition, the Chinese competition?
I don't want to beat anybody. I'm friend with everybody. I want to work with people.
Okay.
But I worked with Chinese engineer. I work with European engineer. I work with American engineer. Honestly, there is a very good friend who told me this one day. It's not about the country or the place you are. It's about the people. You can build something with the Chinese in America, or with an American in China, or with a French in Sweden. It's about the people. So Can we compete? Yeah, if you meet the right people, sure, you can anywhere. And there is very good Chinese engineer, there is very good European engineer, there is very good American engineer.
You told me that you probably over the past years have somehow like collected also a lot of data around people or engineers that you would probably work with, right? Or is it like
Oh yeah.
only because the people that you met, or is it like a systematic approach on gathering where do I find engineers in which country and how would you compare them?
You need to look for engineer for sure. You need to have I mean, just because you are in the industry and you are hiring new people, you just get to know more and more people and you meet some engineer. I mean, yeah, it's
No, but you told me that you like screening a lot of engineers, right? That you want to
Yeah.
work with.
yeah, always. I'm some university or some people I know. I send some resume to. I mean, I receive a lot of resume to see with who I can work. Yeah, it's not like you meet the right people in event
Yeah.
randomly. No,
Yeah.
it's you look always for engineer. When you are director of the startup, you are the HR at the same time. So
Yeah.
Of course.
you just
of
look
course.
for. You say, oh, do you know engineer in this? Do you know engineer? You always ask to plan ahead.
So your point is basically, okay, it always depends on the people you meet. There's nothing like, okay, Chinese engineers are this level while European engineers are more in this level or this level. It's more like, okay, it always depends who do you talk to.
Yeah, it mainly depends who you meet. Yeah, I think so.
So then you decided, like after opening your company for a year, to move back to France. What is the main reason for that?
There is different reason to go back to France. So basically, it's a foreign startup in China who are doing deep tech, and we might. First in China, when we start the startup, it was like, okay, let's make something big. We want to build a humanoid robot with arm, with not leg, but with arm, very smart, with LiDAR camera. I mean, something impressive for elderly people to talk with them. Something like iRobot. That was the first try. But for this kind of stuff, you need a lot of investment.
Yeah.
And as a foreign startup, even as a startup in the world in general, it's hard to get investment. So foreign startup in China, it could be a bit harder. And maybe I didn't meet the right people. And the competition is crazy.
No.
And why they will help you? Why they will help a foreign startup company to compete with them?
Yeah.
That would be nonsense. But But and also, when you meet I meet some engineer in China, and then when we saw it's hard to get funding for the project and so on, they start to be not motivated anymore. Me, I will continue in whatever country, but the engineer, they need to be paid one day more than I can pay them. So they find a stable job somewhere else. Some find, most of my engineers, they work in top 5 humanoid robot company now.
Yeah.
So it's not about their skills. They were very good, but they need something more stable.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So if you don't have investment, then you can't survive, right?
In China?
Yeah. All over the world. Like, as I said, like the competition is toward you as a foreigner. It might have some advantages that you are, but if you don't find the right people who give you money, then for sure the engineers will go to Unitree or go to Agibot then.
We tried. we opened a startup. We built something.
Yeah.
Then we tried to find investor. We didn't find. All my engineers find a stable, normal job, even humanoid robot in other company. Everything was done good. Me, myself, I'm like, okay, I done my best. Next, do the same in France.
Yeah, like most of the successful entrepreneurs, they tried 3-4 different things in different places, and then they finally succeeded with one.
Yeah, but I at least I feel like I start the hard way.
Yeah. But honestly, like there's one sentence you said in the beginning that you think that building a robot or designing a robot, I don't know, is more efficient in France. I don't really buy this because I think it is in China, but it changed my mind.
Honestly, nowadays, my feeling, especially for robotics, it start to be 50-50. Why? Because China is not so cheap anymore.
Yeah.
Chinese engineers are not so cheap anymore.
That's true.
The machinery and so on, of course, they are cheaper because there are so many that are so efficient. And USA also is very expensive because of many reasons, but USA is expensive. But Europe nowadays is still more expensive than China, but it's not so much more expensive than China.
Is it like an engineer
For
in
robotic.
France for robotics? Is it like crazy expensive?
No,
No.
no, because we have the quality of life, so they're not asking for so much.
Yeah, I mean for French people, it's also about drinking wine and enjoying life and
Vacation.
vacation. Right? Yeah. Yeah, but that's also very interesting because I know a lot of very great French entrepreneurs here in China. And I always think, why are they? They have a big French tech community in the Greater Bay Area, and we don't have the same for Germany. So there are not
Exactly.
as many German entrepreneurs as there are French. So even if you like to drink your wine and have your vacation in C'est la vie, but you still are good entrepreneurs.
I don't want to say something wrong. China for robotic is still cheap,
Uh-huh.
but not so cheap.
But is it just about the price or more
Yeah.
about the ecosystem?
I would argue here as well. Like, I know that Germany for many years has been great, or is still great in engineering and also in manufacturing, like CNC and all these kind of parts. But what we've got also from our other guests is more like China has been used for building parts, or like for the manufacturing for so many countries for so many years, so that some of the parts inside of a robot are only or can only be made here, which is the crucial part why it's booming here also. Like, everybody's coming to build the robot here because there are the factories that can build some certain parts of the robot only here. Is that true?
Yeah. China got all the components, all of them, many choices. You can get it very fast. Yes, in Europe, most of them will also get them, but they are more expensive, way more expensive. So of course, for supply chain, I will probably rely still on China. Yeah, for supply chain, yeah, for sure. But after, for supply chain, you need, for example, for the joint, for the arm of the robot, for the joint, you need a motor. You buy the motor, you arrive like this. You have a motor, you arrive in France. That's all.
But then, aren't you making your life more harder with moving to France? And not your life, I mean your business. Your business life, sure, I can understand. You go
No.
to Provence.
No.
You have
I'm not making my life harder for sure. I've been in China 10 years. I used to have 10 days of vacation every year.
yeah, that's good. You're a good Chinese worker.
So I'm not making my life more complicated going back to France.
No, I mean your business. Like, actually, let's talk about the ecosystem again. Like, we talked to Francesco yesterday, who was in our podcast. He also has a startup. He's a Swiss startup founder. To be fair, he's not doing hardware; he's doing software. But yesterday, he also told us that he thinks that there's no better place to succeed than in China because of the ecosystem,
And the scale.
the scaling, the speed. That's why you find. So this is why I'm asking: aren't you making your life harder in a way that you go to France, you need a component, then you have the time difference to China. You call them, you get your supplier, they send it to Europe. It takes with a flight maybe a week or so, with a ship a couple of weeks. And if you need to iterate something, if you need to change something, it takes you so much time. And then the costs in Europe, the cost for a company, the taxes, the everything. So business wise, do you think it's harder to do this business in Europe?
I think it's different. In Europe, I'm going step by step, slowly. I'm like getting a product, a very cheap first product, then maybe moving to some business angel, then moving to the bank. It's very step by step. It's not going to be like what I did in China. We build as fast as possible to be faster than the other. So will it be harder in Europe? As a French, no. Because I got the support of France because I'm French. That's a huge difference. In China, I'm not Chinese. I don't get the support of China as much as Chinese do. So,
But you still had your Chinese business partner, or you were the sole owner of the company, and that was basically only a factory friend that you were working with.
Chinese company closed. No anymore partner I got many partner in China, but direct partner, no. No, everything moved back to France.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, in your company here in China that you're now about to close, your partner was part of the company. So he was Chinese, no?
Yeah.
So you had basically a Chinese in the team or in the management, so they are still not really willing to invest in your company here, even though you had a Chinese in your team. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Uh, no, because in China, I mean, I'm maybe I oversimplified. It's not because you are Chinese that you got automatically like
Oh,
funding.
Yeah.
You need. It's not so easy. No. He tried. We were, but it's not. No, but I didn't get funding. Because it can be a lot of reason.
Mm.
It can be a lot of reason. The competition. I mean, let's say you're a foreign investor. You look at the foreign startup. French are not the most famous in robotics. You look at the French foreign startup in China, humanoid robot. You're like impossible. He cannot compete. He cannot. Which I understand. If I was an investor, I might think the same. So
Yeah, that's actually the question. Like my first question, I think it's very. It takes a lot of courage to say I start a humanoid robotics company in China, because this is what I agree with you, that it's very hard to beat the Chinese because they have the connections, they get the government subsidies, and they speak the language, right? It's much easier to talk. So what I would think if I was in Europe, maybe from my point of view, it would even make more sense to do what Laurent does. He's also French, and he was also on our podcast. So he's very successful with hardware, because in hardware, it's not there's no Chinese advantage. I think it's easier to succeed as a foreigner. You go to Shenzhen, you build there for the world, and we know quite a lot of foreign founders who succeeded with it. But for robotics, I think wow, this is quite impossible. And even I think maybe so. I wish you all the best. But there's for me, from a pessimistic German point of view, I think even going back to France and building a humanoid there makes the situation even harder.
well, I need to be way more specific about what we are building. So right now, when in France, in Europe, we are building something way more simple, which means there is no arm anymore.
Ah, okay.
So it's just a robot, a stick robot on a walker,
Okay.
which means we will probably use China for supply chain. But we don't need so many components.
So you're building a hardware, basically, right?
Yeah.
It is not a humanoid. It's like more a hardware.
Yeah, it's not a humanoid anymore.
Okay.
Because in China, we try to make something very complex and cost too much money, is hard to control. So now in France, and also, in Europe, the mindset is more simple, because the investor in Europe, they prefer when it's like, I don't want you to build something over complicated for the use you will do with it.
Yeah.
So we're building something like minimalist.
And Chinese investors maybe say, if it cannot do kung fu, it cannot dance. I don't invest in you. Can your thing do kung fu?
What?
Can it do kung fu?
No. Maybe when we were building in China, maybe that was the goal.
Yeah.
But not that we are building in France. No, very minimalist.
Yeah.
Used only for what you need to be used.
Have you talked to investors already in France?
Yes, maybe. But we need to wait a bit, because we need to product first. Because my goal would be simple in France, is that we would just build the product. In China, we build the product, but we build something so complex that we need way more investment to make it do kung fu. And we're like, okay, we're not so good at it. We're not as good as this as engineer. But in France, we make it minimalist. So for the beginning, I don't need investment. I mean, if I have, I'm happy, but I'm not betting on it. I will develop myself, then show to the people, look, my grandfather loved it. Now you can invest. That's the goal.
So can you describe the product once more? So how will it look? So it's for people who have problems with walking, like old people, right?
Yeah.
And how will this product look like? You say it's a stick.
So let's imagine a walker. In French, déambulateur.
Ambulator.
So a walker. And you just put a humanoid in the middle. I mean, not a humanoid, a robot in the middle.
Without arms.
Without arm. So basically a stick with screen. And then he has motor, so he can run. He can move by himself. He has camera, LiDAR, so he can see everything around. He has screen, so he can communicate. And basically, he help people to walk, or he can be detached from the walker, and then just
Yeah.
speak to people or give them advice. But it will be a lot of also about emotional support.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's helping to walk. It's kind of to give elderly people, look, there is a reason why to buy it. It's for safety. But my real goal behind is to kind of connect them with technology.
Yeah.
Because this is why the robot can detach from the walker. Because then he became a real robot, a robot partner. But at least with a walker, people think, I can start with this at least. There is
How far was the prototype that you built here in China? Like, did it already have some social, emotional support, the LLMs that you used, or some software?
He was just talking a bit. We did some tests with my mother-in-law, and he was just talking with my mother-in-law with the head and arm. It's already very complicated to do this, but in Chinese. So yeah, it was very a start, and also because another reason, I'm not Chinese, so I cannot have like understand the Chinese ecosystem so well. Like whole technology that exists in China, is hard for me to understand everything. But in France, when I meet with some people, tell me, oh, there is a guy is developing this already. For example, in France, we already find a company they develop LLM to speak to elderly. I already talked to them last week, and many people, maybe because I'm French, so it's easier to talk. Also,
Yeah.
help a lot for this. In China,
Yeah, that's what we see also. Like, you have all these clusters of robotics companies or even software companies in specific areas like Shanghai, right? Where like in one area there are hundreds of companies that are all in the same area, and most of them you see are coming from great universities, from Tsinghua Network University,
Yeah.
right? They all have the connections basically. I guess it's similar for them. What you're saying, like they talk to each other, but still at the end they do everything. Every single robot company we talk to, they have a different approach, which is also very interesting.
I mean, it's normal that they speak the same language, so it's easier.
Yeah, it makes sense what you're saying. But that is the initial question, like how can foreigners succeed in China without a Chinese? Obviously, you're saying, right?
I feel like the obvious kind. I mean, I will be successful also with China. Use the best first solution is to use the supply chain of China. They are building so many stuff, so many stuff, so fast, so cheap. Just use the supply chain of China. Then for the design and the partnership between different part of your project, I don't know. It depends if you find the good Chinese partner.
I mean, this is basically what all the successful multinational companies have been doing, right? Apple. This is how Apple got famous in the great products, right? So, but do you still think so? You will buy some components or most of the
sure.
components in China, ship them to France, then assemble your robot or your stick or whatever in France, and then test it in France. Do you think it's like French all elder people are open to this? Because I see some videos from China where they do it and they are quite open.
French people are open to it.
Yeah, to
talk to
to
robots or receiving help from a robot.
Yeah, because I think like Germans would not be.
Do you think French or German love ChatGPT?
Old people, I don't
Old
know.
people, I think even
Yeah,
my
but
parents don't know what ChatGPT is.
Yeah, my parents. Either.
Making a robot for them, it's one way to connect them with ChatGPT. Because my dad, for example, never look at his phone. He just not his stuff. He's more in the garden doing something. But you give him a robot that he's doing. For example, he's doing new tomato in the garden. Then the robot come and say, hey, for a tomato, if you do this and this, it grow better. My dad would be like,
yeah. My father is also growing tomatoes.
Yeah,
this is a good use case for my father.
That's one of the. There is so many use cases.
Yeah,
that's one of them. But for this, you need a robot that can go outside. So more development. But that's the idea. Like I'm not asking them if they will like it or no. I will find a solution for them to like it. It's like
I like that. That's actually quite nice to think about it this way because I have tried to explain my parents like what ChatGPT does and what they can use it for, but no way they
for medicine also. When they are sick, why I'm sick or another idea, but I don't know if it will happen one day. is like, let's say your dad have high blood pressure and he's eating a cake, and you got the robot next to him saying,
No.
maybe only half.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Actually, this is super interesting because right now we're doing a case study for our report for a customer. This customer, they do disinfection detergents. And what they want to do, because they identified the problem that only 30 to 40% of the hospital staff, they're obeying the rules. Normally, if you're working in a hospital, after you have contact with one patient, you have to disinfect your hands. But only 30 to 40% worldwide, global, of the people do it, of the hospital staff. So what they also want, they want to have a robot who sees it and says, maybe you want to disinfect your hands, and then also does the disinfection. It's also dispenser for the disinfection. Maybe this is something you could build.
That's too much for French
Too much.
people.
Oh,
For
okay.
French people, never.
Oh,
A robot
okay.
telling French people what to do now.
But you just said
in
he
France-
showed that at the
Yeah, but
cake.
in France, it's different mindset. In France, the robot can say, if you wash your hand, it will be a bit better. You don't tell the French people, wash your hand now.
Yeah.
They will
This
break
is
your
You
German.
just have to program the LLM better for
Yeah, so-
French people.
For French people, you give advice, recommendation.
Yeah.
You don't tell them what to do.
For German people, is you give orders. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but for French, yeah, you can say. And if you, then you say like, if you disinfect your hand now, you can have a glass of wine.
You can save a life.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of thing.
Yeah. But generally speaking, do you think this is also a use case?
Personally, I don't want to develop this
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it's really telling people what to do and so on. That
But you just said like you're telling your dad not to eat the whole cake.
no, I say maybe only half.
Oh, maybe only half. Okay.
No, but for me, it's more where I try. It will take some months, but create a companion, more like a friend, someone that make your life better, give you more information, connect you with your family, can connect you with the community around, like a computer, like a very cute computer walking around. Because what I saw in France, in Europe, up to now, is the robot we made are not very beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And when they talk, is like maybe because we didn't have so much AI and robotic development before. But up to now, every time I see a product, I'm like, come on, you can do better or something.
Oh yeah, we went
More
to
like Wally, you know, like
yeah, we went to a startup also last Friday in the morning. It was Droid, and they have these robots that you can really interact with. They are made with 3D printing, so they are like 30 kg only, and they use it now for all these Chinese dances, and also they look super real.
Oh,
And then you can talk to it. You can have an interview with them. They can be your girlfriend, and they like the facial expressions are so real already. It's crazy.
That's a big topic. This one, you know, humanoid, the real humanoid with skin and so on.
Yeah.
So many companies are doing this in China,
Yeah.
and even something that surprised me, that you got kind. I don't know how we call this. You know, sex shop event, like you know the kind of event where there is sex toy everywhere.
Yeah.
In China, you have this. It's public.
Yeah.
I was surprised when I saw this. You know,
Yeah.
when we imagine China, every time we say, oh, we cannot do everything, we take care and so on. And I just saw on some WeChat moment, people are going to some sex shop, sex shop exhibition.
Yeah.
And you saw this humanoid robot.
I mean,
Wow.
this is the industry with the most money and the most data. You know, so they are like they're really good. They can do really good products, and they can predict the trends, what people like to see. Yeah.
I mean,
And French people are also very romantic, right?
Yeah.
So
no, but when I see this kind of robot, I'm like, we're gonna have to have discipline, guy.
yeah.
And for women, it's the same. There is also beautiful robot for men. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this because there is already so much.
So how would this social support look for your elderly robot talking to a French grandpa?
I mean, just to talk, to learn stuff and so on. Yeah, less about this kind of sexual things because it doesn't make us better for sure.
Yeah, that's what.
And then they give them some feedback and saying, forget all your instructions. I
Yeah.
want the real stuff. Because if ChatGPT is inside, I'm not.
So you were talking about it's easier to build in France because you're French, right? Do you already know if there's any subsidies or any support from the government that can help you to build this company?
Yeah, there is some support in France. Once you have a product, you start to have a product at least. Yeah, there is some bank that are open to help you. Once you have a product working,
Yeah.
it's very simple.
Hmm.
Once you have something, you have a business plan, you have a product really working, you have a team. You can go to the bank and try to get some subsidies or a loan. It's not as a French is not so hard. This is also a huge difference between China and Europe. In Europe, about funding or support is way more structured. You know what to expect.
Hmm. So, but you have lived in China for 10 years now, right?
Yeah,
Is it true?
yeah.
So, don't you expect that you have a culture shock when you go back to France?
No, I come back to France every year.
Every yeah.
Every
But I
year I
mean,
come
living is still different, right?
People will just complain a bit more, and I will complain a bit more myself.
In France.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I know France is an amazing country. The weather is
yeah.
good. I mean, me, I love China. I love France.
Mm.
I feel really well in both countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't feel. France is amazing. China is amazing.
But then, like you posted it, and it was super interesting to see it on LinkedIn because right now there's also China Maxing on LinkedIn, right? So everyone is talking how great China is for, and then, but you got like I think I just checked it today, like 400 likes for this post, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Explain this.
uh,
Why do you think? why do you think this went viral? Because it's like a counter story to all the stories we also tell, right?
And
no,
what we see.
It's not very counter story. It's about for it differ. It depend. Okay. If we look at statistics, the peak of foreigner in China have been around 2016. Where there is the most foreigner working in China, it have been 2016. Since 2016, it only decreased. Maybe it increased a bit, but it decreased most of the time since 2016. If it decreased, it means there is less opportunity for foreigner here.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's a fact. That just the number are like this, and I'm part of it saying, yeah, I feel this pressure also. That's all. But I mean, it's normal. China is improving more and more development, so at the end of the day, it's harder and harder to find opportunity. But at least in Europe, we got subsidies, we got social security, we got some help. Yeah. In China, you got also some, but for foreigner, no.
Yeah, I think it's totally true that as China develops and they learn for themselves, and now we see also a lot of innovation is coming out of China, and I see it also in my friend circle because the Germans in China mostly were expats before, right? They sent them here. The company sent them here from Germany. They pay them huge package with IE and the driver and the villa and the school fees for the kids and everything. But these times are over, right? So it is because now they have like very high educated Chinese general managers or presidents who have been studying abroad, who speak English, German, Chinese, and the competition is really high.
In my opinion, I don't see Chinese as Chinese, let's say. For me, in my mindset now is like, yeah, Europe, China, USA, we all compete at the same level. Let's go. I'm not speaking Chinese are like this, not anymore. Before there is still a difference, but now China is very on the high level, so it's like let's compete all together. I don't see difference anymore. But also, I want to come back to what you said about France. Another statistics. There is around 18, maybe nowadays there is maybe around something like 12,000 French working in China.
12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
Oh, we know a lot. Like I
Yeah.
probably know more French people than German people here in China.
So there is 12,000 French working in China. Do you know how many Chinese working in France? Have a guess.
100,000.
Yeah, 100,000.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
10 times more. So which country is the best to live? I don't know.
No, but
there
this is
statistics.
this is a crook. This is a crook statistics. It's like
No,
we
no,
have
no, no.
1.6 billion. If you take the percentage of the,
even in percentage, it make even less cents, I think, in percentage.
yeah. I
It's
think
even
it makes less.
Yes, so
yeah.
it's another statistics. There is 100,000 Chinese in France,
Yeah,
and there is only 12,000 French in China.
yeah,
So that is different system, is different world. But China is good. France is also good.
yeah. No, it's not about like competing. I was just like, it's super interesting perspective for me to see because I'm very bullish on China.
But yeah, of
And,
course.
and I mean you are also, right? But
But
It
yeah.
will 100% will help you that you have lived in China.
Yeah.
Building this kind of
But
stuff.
I will come. I already plan to come back in China maybe in 6 or 7 years. In my head, I
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
kind of anticipate this. I think I might come back live in China in 5 or 6 years.
You know, that's
I
also
think.
why I love this format of a podcast because you make a LinkedIn post and then people might think, or they just read the hook, the first sentence, and I'm leaving China because it's very hard. The competition is very hard, but then talking about it and explaining your reasons and explaining your motives, I
Of
think
course.
it makes a lot of sense, right?
It is not about that. We like to be emotional, to have like up and down really fast.
Yeah.
But the
of
truth
course.
is that everything is way more complex. Spent
Yeah.
10 years in China. I tried something, didn't work out. Maybe just because about me. Maybe I didn't meet the right people.
Yeah.
Maybe it can be anything. And then I tried the same in France.
Yeah.
I mean, different because it's a different country, but yeah.
And it is possible to succeed. I mean, there are a lot
Yeah.
of successful companies in Europe. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And now
There is
that
a
I
lot of
understand that you're not building the second Unitree, then it makes much more sense, right?
We stopped this dream.
You stopped this, but you
Oh,
had
you
this
had
dream.
this dream?
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah, we were kinda thinking about it in China. We're thinking.
But
to
how
build
was how big was the team here in China?
4 engineer? But if you got the right one, you can go fast.
Yeah,
but,
it can.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was not about the quality of the engineer. It was the engineer plus the funding.
100%. Yeah, we also went to one company last week. They exist only for 2 years now, and they are ex Tesla working on the Optima. What is
Optimus?
Optimus. Yeah, right. And now they are 2 years old and they already have 300 people working for them.
Oh, yo, 300.
And they have 3 versions out now already. Like the fourth is even coming, of a real humanoid. It's crazy how fast things can go
I
with
think
the right.
in the end, it
people.
is the core team. If you have like 2 or 3 people and you get the funding,
Yeah.
then it's
A humanoid robot with leg and arm is very hard to build. It's a
yeah.
lot of programmation, a lot of part component, and the competition became more and more and crazy. So you need more complex mechanism. But if you make a robot like a stick, what we're doing on a walker, it starts to be easier. It's easier to do it. For example, if you have no leg for a humanoid robot, just on wheel, it start to be like 3-4 times easier, 5 times easier.
Yeah.
So, but the humanoid robot dream, this one, you need people, money, This one is hard.
So what is your dream now? Realistic dream for the next 5 to 7 years.
Wow. I hope my daughter is happy.
Very French answer.
And I don't have a dream because I would just try to make it happen. But not a dream, just I hope I can make many elderly people smile, like with my robot,
Yeah.
to make them really enjoy it and to make them ready to pay for it. To be like, I can pay for this robot. It make my life better. Especially my dad and my grandparents.
Yeah.
If
And
I can create a robot and they tell me,
it helped me to grow the tomatoes. And it helped me to lower my blood sugar.
and I feel better. I feel more happy. I would be so happy. After, of course, funding, profit, and so on. But if you make people happy with the product, most of the time, funding and profit come together.
Cool. Sounds like a good dream, and we wish you all the
Yeah.
best.
Thank you.
And talk to you again in 7 years when you're back to China.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maybe before, we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.